Okay, so before everything, a very, very, very big good morning to everyone, because good morning is said when you start your day. So every homeopathic session here in IFPH teaches every one of us something or the other from all the varied speakers that we have always on this session. So today another new session. So I'll be talking on behavioral homeopathy. So for all those who know this, it's good. But for all those people who are not aware of this method of prescription in homeopathy, it's a very big good morning. So beginning as a very good morning to everyone. Behavioral homeopathy is nothing new. It was always there in our homeopathic life. We have authors like Philip Bailey, Catherine Coulter, Luke De Shepper, who's been writing. Is my screen visible?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Who's been writing a lot about the behavioral patterns of the patients who come to our clinic. So, this method, which I'll be discussing today, is nothing but a glance of how it actually works in our clinic, how the system works. So, I'll proceed and just okay. So before I start with my actual sessions, I would like to salute all my teachers who have given me all the knowledge that I have. And so it's a Guru Vandana that I would really start with. We all have good homeopathic teachers, and being in the city of Mumbai, I was blessed to go and personally get my clinical trainings from all the stalwarts for that matter, Praful Vijayakar, Rajan Shankaran, and many more. So I have learned something or the other from each and every one that I came across. But the most important thing about homeopathy, I've learned from my father. He was a homeopath. His uncle, his siblings, all were homeopaths. So my father is a person who introduced me to the world of homeopathy. And my father was very orthodox, a typical Kerala man who never allowed the daughter, the only daughter, to go around and play. So right from the age of 7, 8, or 9, he used to take me to his clinics. After my school, I was supposed to go with him to his evening cleanings, OPDs. And I never liked those days, honestly, but he forced me to. And I used to spend my childhood days playing with the toddler patients. Eventually, when I grew up as a teenager, I used to write his log books. And by the time I finished my 12th standard, or the GCSEs, internationally known as A levels, my father taught me everything that was clinical, why sulfur, why belladonna, and what is auscultation, what is palpitation, where is appendicitis. Yes, that was the thing. And then I was been asked by my dad, if you want, you can go for homeopathy. And then eventually I took up homeopathy. College was very good, and we had various, eminent teachers, who taught. But among everything, what happened was the theoretical stuff that we learned in the college was totally different from what my dad used to practice, because he was a very fast prescriber. He used to just take 5 or 10 minutes with each patient. And it was very strange for me, because he used to see the patient walking in, and just two casual questions, he used to say, get belladonna ready for him, get bryonia ready for him. And I used to wonder, how is he doing this? Because in the medical college, we have been taught 1 hour of clinical case taking, almost 45 to 50 minutes. We students have been given that pro forma of right from the name until the physical generals, until the sleep. You have to ask so many questions in between. And my father used to hardly ask any questions in most of the cases. But yes, difficult cases, he used to take enough time with every patient and used to ask everything in detail. So it was too much of confusion in my mind. So there were days when I had a fight with my father, saying that I'm not going to sit down with you, because what you're doing is just quackery. There is no science behind it. I believed that, he's just sitting down with a patient for 5 or 10 minutes, just casually asking some questions, or just allowing the patient to talk, and he's ready with the prescription. Whereas that is not what we learn in homeopathic colleges. So I believed that he's a quack. I believed that all his siblings, his uncle, in Malayalam you say LHN, they all are quacks. They are not practicing homeopathy, because I could not understand the logical explanation, or the scientific explanation between his practice and what has been given. So very strangely and very fortunately, I came across a man, and that was Dr. Milind Rao. he was the man who actually explained me everything that my father is doing in his clinic. He was the man who actually explained me, okay, this is so and so rubric, this is how sulfur behaves, this is how arsenic behaves, this is why belladonna has been given, this is why gelsemium has been given. So if I would not have met Dr. Milind Rao in my life, I would not have learned. And Dr. Milind Rao was the president of HHF Academy. He was a co-founder. He was the person who had created such a huge legacy that now we have a huge HHF Academy running all over India. It's a huge institute, and all his students are carrying forward the legacy. So my all my salutations for my teachers and for my dad and my master. So going forward, I'll start. And before I start, I would like to make my objectives very clear regarding the whole session. So today, what I'll be doing is. I have taken up two aphorisms to discuss, and I would like to show two chronic cases and two acute cases to make understand how you use this aphorism in your clinic in either of the chronic cases or the acute cases. So this is how I'll be doing. I'll be explaining you the cases. Of course, I understand the time limit, so I have written down the cases in my PPT, but I'll be just verbally saying the cases. So instead of the audience looking into the PPT, it will be good if you just listen to me. So there are two chronic and two acute cases. And then with the help of these cases, how do you just look into the behavioral patterns of the patients who's sitting there? And then how do you come to the drug? This is how I'll be going forward. Okay, so this is the first chronic case. This is a case of eczema. And as I said, my experience comes from my master, Dr. Rao, my father, and from my own experience. So here I have blended four cases. I've taken case from my master. I've taken one case from my father's clinic, and the rest two cases are the cases here in this country that I've personally prescribed. So this was a case from my master. I'm sharing Dr. Milind Rao sir's clinic. So I'm just verbally saying it. So this is a two huge case. It's a small case of 18-month-old baby who comes with the mother to the clinic. So the child is sitting in front of the doctor, I mean with the mother. So the mother is not being allowed to tell the whole case to the physician. That's my sir. So what is happening is this is a case of chronic eczema. So the mother is explaining too much of rashes, too much of itching, too much of crying. The child keeps crying throughout the day and throughout the night, especially. And in the night, the mother is not been allowed to sleep at all because she has to get up and she has to feed, obviously. But along with that, too much of cream, application of ointments, whatever was possible, the mother used to do. So while the mother is narrating all these things, what was being observed is this child was constantly biting his arms. At the same time, the child was pushing the mother. He's a 18-month-old baby. So he was pushing the mother towards the exit door so that the mother will take away the child from this room, from the cabin. So my sir, that is Rao sir, asked him, so why is he behaving like this? Is he very hungry or is he very sleepy? What is happening here with the child? So the mother says, no, doctor, this is how the child is. This is how he behaves. He just makes things miserable for me. I just can't do any work at home. I can't go out shopping. I can't talk to relatives. See, here I can't talk to you. Meanwhile, this child tries to pull the hair of the mother, and this child bites the shoulder of the mother, and he's constantly pushing the mother outside so that they are just gone out. So the sir asked him, okay, fine, if does he feels better when he's taken out? So then you please go out. So then what happens? The mother says, yes, he loves going out. Whenever he's behaving like this is the first thing that I do. I take him outside. It can be anywhere, but I have to just move from that place to some other place wherein my child finds comfort, and that is how he gets comforted. And meanwhile, there's a sister who is accompanying this child. The sister tries to, try to entertain the child so that things are relaxed. So she tries to pick up some toy and pick up some sweets. So this child just throws away. Okay. So this is how the clinical presentation is. So in this case, what I'm focusing on is the behavior. How is a child behaving in front of the physician? And our master prescribes a drug based on this much of observation. Okay. So I'm leaving the audience here with the first case. Let's move to the second case, because what I have done here is I have taken one drug and I have given 4 cases. So I'm going to the next case. Now, this case is again a chronic case. This is a case of Rolandic syndrome. This was a case who came to my father. In his clinic, this 8-year-old boy comes with the mother, and my father prefers talking to the patient first, more than anything. So my father asks basic questions: How are you? How old are you? What is your name? Where do you stay? This child just says one thing: I'm not going to answer you at all. Okay, so there ends a conversation with the boy, and then my father asks the mother, what is happening? So this boy gets his facial palsy, epileptic attacks where this facial muscles, it goes into spasm. That is a Rolandic syndrome. Again, as I'm focusing on the behavioral pattern, I'm not going to talk anything about the pathology of the cases involved. We all know what Rolandic syndrome is, but that is a classical presentation seen since almost 1 year or something. So this has been happening. It's a relapse that's happening almost, and the mother is not able to understand why this is happening. Every now and then this child comes up with this palsy, this convulsions attacks, so so the my father's general method is, I mean, as I said, this is a method been successfully used by my dad and of course my master. So they don't have this pattern of talking too much or asking too many questions on the pathology. So the first thing that is been involved is, okay, since when is this happening? So the mother says this boy was staying in a joint family in Mumbai, and the father is a very rich businessman, and the father wanted this child. He was the only son, so the father wanted this boy to be very, very successful in life, very, very successful in his academics. So the father decides to send him to a very good boarding school. That's a residential school, we say. So the boy refuses. The boy keeps on pleading the father for quite a long time. When they go for seeing the schools around, the boy never happily accompanies them. He tries all his level best to say that, no, I want to be in the family. I'm happy with the school here. I don't want to go anywhere else. But the father says, no, this is not going to work. You have to. Finally, the boy gets admitted into so and so residential school. Then he starts living there. So the mother says, my son was all right. He was very happy, very jovial, as long as he used to stay with us in this family, and as long as he was in this school. But when he moved to the residential school, he started with all these weird changes. He stopped talking to anyone around, and he used to spend more time with his teacher. There was a group teacher who's been assigned, so he used to spend time with the teacher, and they were been given their own rooms. But this boy used to prefer staying with the teacher for a long time until it's their sleeping time. Even if the teacher is saying, okay, you go to your room, go and do your homework, and now after that you have to go for your bedtime, this boy preferred staying with the teacher. That was one change with the mother said. My daughter or my son was never like that. This is a very strange behavior. At the same time, he became very particular about what the boys in the school are saying. The boys are saying, I mean, the boys used to talk to him. Oh, look at his shirt. Oh, look at how he's talking, or look at his pencil case. So this boy used to get affected. He used to, whenever his mother used to call him at his residential school, he used to cry for all the small, small things. That boy made fun of me, and that girl was also looking at what I'm wearing. Why are these people here? So again, the mother is saying, this was not my son. He was very free, very jovial, very happy-go-lucky. And this all things have come up recently. And this boy was the mother says the teacher has reported from the residential school. This boy is very particular about what is being served in the residential school canteen during the lunchtime, during the meal time. When they go to their cafeteria, this boy asks the canteen guy, when did you make this? When was this made? How was this made? Or else he will look into the packets, if there is any liquid juice or any crisp that is taking, he used to look into the packaging, saying that when was this made? What is the manufacturing date of this? So the mother is saying, this is very strange about my son. He was never like this. And at home, whenever he's back home from his residential school, he preferred to stay in silence and not talking to anyone else. So this was a very strange thing, and he used to get angry for every small things. Okay, so my father prescribes a drug based on this information, and uh, the epileptic attacks reduces. Okay, so this is a second case. Okay, going forward to the third case. Now, this is a case of an African boy, a 5-year-old African boy who came to me here in my practice here. So what happens is, in this case, this is a 5-year-old boy. They come with a high fever, I mean, since one day, the whole family are my patients. So the mother brings this boy to me saying that since one day, this boy is having fever since past 24 days, and he gets occasional fits or attacks of fits during the high peak of fever. And when I asked them what happened, why is this, what happened and why is this boy getting this fever? So the mother says, since past 10 days, it was their Christmas holidays and the father was supposed to spend the Christmas with this boy, with the family, obviously. But due to some reason, the father had to go to fly to New York. So the father drops all the plans and the father decides that I am going and you guys have to stay here for the whole of Christmas. The boy is not happy with this, and the boy ends up, all those typical childish stuffs. No, dad, don't go. You should not go, and all that stuff was going on. But the father could not change his plans. And on the day when this boy was, the father was flying. The boy wakes up early in the morning and starts persuading the father once again. No, no, you don't go. You don't go. You have to spend the Christmas with me. You cannot go like this. Obviously, the father who had to leave for the airport. The father had to reach his destination at a particular time. So the father, in a fit of anger, just pushed this child away, and the father says no. And the boy doesn't listen. He starts crying. The father slaps him, and the father leaves for the airport. And the following day, with the following few hours, within few hours, this boy comes down with high fever. And during fever, this boy is throwing things. The sister says, the mother is saying that he fights a lot with the sister, and he keeps throwing stuffs at the sister, and he is not ready to eat anything. And what exactly is happening is they have a pet dog, and it's very unusual. The pet dog was been brought by him, but this boy, during the fever episodes, he becomes so violent and aggressive that he starts hitting the dog, the pet dog, hitting and kicking the pet dog. So this was the behavioral change seen during the fever attack, and this was taken into consideration for the prescription. Now, going forward to the next case, this is again a case of a girl, 15-year-old girl. What happens is, this is a British girl, and what happens here in the British culture is, when the girl, when the student finishes the 10th standard, that is the GCSE, they have to go for a prom party, the so-called prom party, which happens in our India as well. But here, it's a custom to go with a boyfriend. You need to have a partner with you when you go for your prom party. So what happens? This case happened with my daughter. So this is not my daughter. This is my daughter's friend. So these all girls were at my house, and they were all getting ready for this prom party. All this makeups and wearing good clothes, and they were exchanging pictures with each other, and they were all getting ready for this. And this girl, she's all set already. She sent her photos to her parents and to her friends and relatives, whoever, and then she's ready and she's talking over the phone. And we all are sitting together. Suddenly this girl starts crying over the phone and say, no, no, you can't say this to me. How are you behaving like this to me? No, you can't dump me like this. How will I go for the prom party? With whom will I go for the prom party? How can you say no at this last minute? How dare you talk all these things? No, no, please don't say no. I have to come with you. You should be there. And what happens here is, the girl stays in their own respective place. The so-called partner or the boyfriend, the male student will come and will escort this female. That is how the prom party goes in this culture. So this girl, from the conversation, I could make out that that guy who was supposed to come, he has refused coming, and this girl is just reacting to the situation. And then suddenly what happens? She walks off to another bedroom and she says, please do not disturb me, leave me alone for some time. She goes and closes the door, and after half an hour or 1 hour, when these girls are all ready for the party, she says, I'm not going to the party. And she starts removing all her jewelries and all her makeup that she has done, and she throws away her mobile phone, and she just refuses. And then I interrupt and I ask her, what is the matter? Why is that you don't want to go for the party? She complains of terrible headache at that time. She says, no, I've got a terrible headache, I don't want to. And on further questioning, says she used to get this sort of headaches. There are a few episodes of terrible migraine attacks, and this is nothing new for me. This is another migraine attack, so I don't want to go for the party. So again, a medicine was been prescribed based on this. Okay, so these are the 4 cases that I want to show. I understand it was very fast, but we are running out of time. So what has happened here is, I've taken up these cases and I've just shown how based on the behavior, how based on the clinical presentation, because no further interrogation, no too much of details has been taken on the physical part of the story. You just focus on how the patient is behaving in front of you, or from the parents, whatever the relatives are giving you data, you're working working on that. And then we come to a conclusions. This is the drug. And as I said, this has been successfully practiced by the so-called HHFians who are there all over the world. And I have seen my father practicing this method. And in this country, I have opted to practice this method because, as I said, I have learned from Shankaran, almost all the stalwarts, Vijayka sir, there were so many, to name them. But I thought this method is very important because what is happening in this country is we are not being given the value that we get back in India. Patients don't come to us very easily. So if there is a patient who's coming to us, we need to show them that homeopathy works. If you're not, if I don't hit the similimum at the first point, I may not get that patient back. Unlike in India, the patients are very good with the doctors. They come back, they'll come and even they can tell you, doctor, your homeopathic medicines are not working. Are you going to change the medicine? Are you going to give me another medicine? How long should I continue? This doesn't work here in this country. In this country, if I show that homeopathy is working, I'll get back my patient. I may get another patient. Otherwise, I lose the patient. So in this country, this has become all the more important for me to adapt the same prescription method, because if I hit the similimum in the first go, the patient comes back. Now, what is hitting the similimum? As we go, we all have learned this. You need the mental PQRS, you need the mental generals, then comes your physical PQRS, and then comes your physical generals. When you go into the hierarchy of the symptoms, we all need all these things to hit the similimum. But what I've learned from my father and my master, what he says is, mental PQRS in the hierarchy, if you go into the repertorial sheet, if you have your mental PQRS in the top list, you have a set of rubrics. And then whatever rubrics you put below is just going to follow that. Okay, and you are just made of your mind, So Kent has given so much value and so much volume to the repertory, mind section of the repertory, is because we need to emphasize on the mind section of the man. And mind section of the man is nothing but the mental PQRS. So when we do this behavioral homeopathic method, we get mental PQRS in this. And mental PQRS, if your case is giving you mental PQRS, that means you hit the similimum in the first go. Okay, to explain further, I'm just in short explaining about aphorism 6 which talks about unprejudiced observer. It's a big aphorism. I'm just going to work on the underlined side. Here, Hanival says he notices only the deviation of the former healthy state of now diseased individual, which are felt by the patient himself, remarked by those around, and observed by the physician. So what Hahnemann is saying is, in order to help the patient, we need to understand what is the deviation from the former healthy. So every person has got a healthy state. So the vital force deviates. So you need to understand what is the deviation of the healthy state, to where it has deviated. I mean, if the healthy state is on another side and the disease state is on another side. So we need to perceive what is the deviation. And this you can perceive from what is been felt by the patient. Obviously, whatever the patient is behaving is nothing but what he has felt. Now, in these cases, we saw the child is biting the mother or pulling the hair of the mother, and that boy, residential school boy, he refuses answering the question. That is the behavior. Why? Because he's feeling something inside. So what is the patient feeling? And then remarked by those around him. The relatives will also say something or the other about the patient. And then whatever you observe, this is how aphorism 6 explains us. In support to that, I have given aphorism 3 here in this slide. Again, this is a big one. I'm just working on the highlighted side. This one says that if the physician clearly perceives what is to be cured in the disease, that is to say in every individual case of the disease, that means you first need to see what is to be cured in the disease. Okay, Rolandic syndrome, a patient comes, eczema, a patient comes, you first need to understand what is to be cured in this case, and then if it clearly perceives what is in the curative medicine. So what Hahnemann is trying to say is, you need to understand where is the deviation of the vital force in the patient, and also you need to understand what is curative in that particular medicine that you're going to prescribe, and you just need to match this too, and that is where you have to hit the similimum, and that he knows how to adapt according to clearly defined principles what is curative in the medicine. Again, what is highlighted in the yellow lines is, you have to to take into consideration the deviation of the vital force in the man, and you have to see what is curative in the medicines, in the homeopathic drugs that we have in our Materia Medica Pura. And then you have to use all the well-defined principles. There is a huge list of homeopathic principles. Follow those principles and then go with this matching. This is what these two aphorisms are meaning. Of course, see, this is a huge subject we have to discuss at length, but IFPH has given me a very short time, so I'm just brisking through everything. Okay, so the most important thing that we all have know is the similimum is the one where PQRS at the holistic level of the patient are matching with the PQRS of the holistic level of the remedy. This is what I understood. I explained just now, sorry. So, okay, let's talk. I would really appreciate if there is anyone in the audience who can tell me about the analysis. It would be good, I just would appreciate that. Analysis is, what do you understand? Two chronic cases, two acute cases. Of course, anybody can come up with what is your understanding, where is the energy deviated in so and so cases? What is to be cured in case 1, case 2, case 3, case 4? So do we have anyone who can tell in short? Okay, remedy comes the next. Okay, I think we'll go ahead. I can't see anybody coming up. So what is happening
Dr.
is, okay,
Pallavi,
in case
Dr.
one, there
Pallavi
is...
wish to say something. Dr. Pallavi. Please unmute from your side, Dr. Pallavi.
Hi.
Hi, Dr. Pallavi.
Hi, Padma. Great to see you here. You're looking beautiful. Nice presentation. So the cases to deal with, what I understood from last 3 cases specifically, the first one may or may not be related to this analysis. Wherever he wanted to do something very desperately, and there they are not allowed to do at all. Sudden rejection, sudden contradiction, and the person is going into a very negative state of mind where he's completely disheartened immediately.
Yes,
and
that's very correct.
That he takes to the heart. Now there is one remedy, maybe Ignatia, in where there is imbecility, negativism, where he's expecting and he doesn't get, and then the track completely changes with disappointment in love.
Yes.
So and it goes into disconcertedness. The patient goes into disconcerted, and everything is fallen apart.
Yes, very correct.
So now go ahead and take the lead.
Okay. Is there anyone else, or should I proceed? Dr. Shaji, can you see anyone else? Because I'm with the screen, I can't see the participant list. And
at present, there is nobody. At present, there is nobody.
Okay, fine. Okay, so any guesses on the remedy? Anyone? Okay, see, because it was just one medicine which was used in all the 4 cases. As I said, I just wanted to show how you can understand the curative power of one drug and how you can use that curative power in the clinical presentation of either acute or chronic cases. This was my attempt today with this session. So the drug prescribed was Lycinum. So Lycinum is the drug that was been prescribed in all the cases, all the 4 cases. I'll eventually show how I reached there, and then I'll proceed and I'll explain how Lycinum and why Lycinum. So once you understand, this is one beautiful thing that Dr. Rao sir used to work with each and every student in HHF, wherein he used to explain the curative power of all the remedies and the journey, the entire journey.
One Dr. Mufida mentioned the medicine Lycinum.
Oh, brilliant. Congratulations. Okay, so I'll just explain in short. I mean, this was the totality that was been taken of the first child. That is a child, the 18-month-old baby of eczema. So the rubrics taken were biting himself and injuring himself, causing him to injure himself, spitting. Yes, this is one thing I forgot to mention. When his sister was asking him, "Do you want this toy? Do you want some chocolates?" He was literally spitting the sister. So this was the behavioral pattern that was seen, observed by the physician. Wandering desire to wander, the mother was saying that he likes to wander and throwing things around. This was the first repertorial totality. Going to the second one, this where the screen, I mean, are the slides clear? Do you want me to zoom out a little more?
You can go to the slideshow.
Okay, is this okay?
Yeah. Yeah, that's
Okay,
fine.
so here, yes, here, this were the rubrics that were taken. Ailments from anger suppressed. Now, what happened with this baby, this boy is, he never wanted to leave his family. He wanted to be his father. And yes, he was very attached to his father, and he never liked the whole concept of going away from the family, not having those dinners with his dad, no, not going for a bike ride with his dad. So that he had lots of suppressed anger that my father is leaving me to a residential school. And ailments from being scorned, obviously new school and bullying is very common, even if it doesn't happen in a large scale. Everywhere you find this, everybody will look at each other, will talk about each other, but this child could not take up anything, so that was ailments from scorned. And yes, one more important thing I forgot to mention was this, the mother also complained that since this boy has gone into the school, he has come up with concentration problem. He's not able to study. His academic orientation has gone down. So that rubric was taken, concentration difficult. Fear poisoned of being poisoned. That's what I said. He used to look out for every packaging, every juice cans, what is the date and all. So he always carried that fear, what if I eat something, drink something, something goes wrong? Because it was a totally new environment for him. The whole hostel life was a new environment, new people. So he had so much of fear inside him. The mother says he gets very angry for everything. Once he's back home with the joint family, lots of members in the family, he gets anger issues with each and everyone. So those is anger trifles at biting during convulsions, answering, refusing to answer. My father asked him basic questions and he bluntly said, I'm not going to answer anything. Biting himself, delusion, being deceived. See what happened. He had that faith in his father that my father will always keep me with him, but his father did not. So that was delusion, deceived. Now, in the next case, this was the rubrics been taken, begging, pray for him and not to leave him alone. This was the case of ailments from being abused and reckless things impelled to do and cruelty. We're running out of time. I'll just run quickly.
No, you can take time. You can take time. No problem.
Okay. So, yes, so that girl of prom party, she's asking her boyfriend, don't leave me alone. Don't leave me. Just a minute. Yes. No, this was a case of the third case where the fever case, the fever case is the father goes to the airport and he pushes the child in the morning, says that I have to go. And before that, the child was always after the father, Dad, don't leave me alone for Christmas. I want to be with him. He used to keep on asking, begging to his father that, no, please don't leave me. And then the ailments from abuse, the fever came up only after the father left for the airport, So that is ailments from being abused. Impulse, morbid, reckless things. Yes, one characteristic thing which I forgot to mention while talking about the case was the mother says when they were coming back from the airport, it's a very mandatory rule here in this country that the kids are supposed to, under 12, if your child is under 12, you're supposed to sit on the back seat. You cannot sit on the front seat, first thing. Second thing, always seat belts are very, very mandatory. And you have sit on the car seat. You're not supposed to sit on the seats of the car directly. Okay, so every child who is less than 12 has to sit back on the car seat. So this boy was been sitting on the car seat behind, and the elder sister was there in the front. She's an elder sister, and then the mother was driving after dropping the father at the airport. So what this boy does is, while coming back from the airport, he opens the door, but fortunately we have car lock system here. Child lock was been on, so the boy could not open the door, but the mother could understand that the child is been aggressive with the door handle. And second is, he removed all the bells of the car seat, and just because he could not go to that door, he came to this side where there was no car seat. He sat there and he started rolling down the windows of the car. He was trying to put his head out. So the mother said, this is very strange. We have not seen our son like this. While coming back from airport, he made my driving miserable. It was so hard. I was on a highway road. I was running at a speed of 70 per hour. And this guy, he was behaving so miserable. So this is that impulse, morbid, reckless things impel to. I mean, he's a sensible boy. He can see what is right and what is wrong at the age of 8. But he became so impulsive at that point that he knew I should not come off my seat belt. I should not go to the other side of the car. He just did everything that was reckless. That is why we took this rubric: impulse, morbid, reckless, impelled to do. So the remedy again was lysinum. This case again, similar rubrics: begging. The girl was begging the boy, don't leave me, I have to go for this prom party and I have to go with you only, I cannot go with anyone else, cannot leave me. She was screaming on the phone. When she came out of the room, she decides that she don't want to go for that. And prom party is a much awaited event in the life of every student. They just wait throughout their academic life for this one day in their life wherein they can go and perform whatever, enjoy and perform. So she took an impulsive decision that no, I'm not going for the party. She removes all her earrings and removes her makeup, and the chain is been snatched by herself, and she throws that apart and throws away the mobile. I don't want to attend any phone calls. And she asked all the other girls on inside the house, saying that you all go. And I was there trying to convince her, no, don't behave like this, you should go for the party. She was just throwing things and impulsive decision, so that is the impulse reckless attitude. So this is the deviation that we saw in all the 4 cases. So what happens in the 4 cases is there is one causative factor. And how is this causative factor deviating the vital energy? In all the cases, we saw that they go very wild, very impulsive, very morbid. So this is what we need to observe. This is what in aphorism 3 and VA6 says, that you have to first see where is the energy getting deviated. The patient is always, we all human beings have this healthy side. Okay, so when we say vital force, unbounded sway, we say, I mean, I remember when I was, as I said, my days with my father was when I was not into medical college, so my father used to explain homeopathy in very short languages, and he used to have such heavy OPDs, tremendous patients, and 5 to 10 minutes every patient. He never got time for me, and I had my school days, my tuitions, so he used to explain homeopathy. He used to say that vital force is like this, you have this vital force and it just deviates. This is the unbounded sway of the vital force. And you have your good side, your positive side, you have masculine energy on one side, your feminine energy on other side. You have the good qualities on one side, the bad qualities on one side. So if you're very cheerful because of a agent, a morbid agent, that is the ailments because of a causative factor from your environment, you go from the healthy side to the unhealthy side. That is, as we see in all these cases, the very cheerful, bubbly, lively personalities, suddenly they become very impulsive, very morbid. Okay, again, as I said, this is too much to explain, so I'm not going in depth. I'll just run to the next slide, wherein we can see what happens with lysinum and why lysinum goes into this state. So what is happening with lysinum? Lysinum is what is made of the saliva of the dog who goes mad. That is how we get lysinum. So what happens with the dogs are, they're very faithful to the masters. They're very dependent on the master for everything, for a walk, for shelter, for food, for pampering, love, everything they are dependent on the master. And in return, they are very, very loyal. So, and they always wants to be the master. This is the quality of a dog. Okay, so this is what we see in all these 4 cases as well. These people are very, very attached, attached to the father, attached to the boyfriend. And that dependency on that one person is so strong that you just want that person to be around you. You just want to be with that person. Why? Because this is that person, that one single attachment in your life. It can be with a toy, it can be with your childminder, it can be with your grandmother, it can be with anybody. But that attachment is so strong and so dependent that you get everything from that person. That is a sense of security a dog gets, that is a sense of security, a secured feeling wherein, I have everything, the whole world is mine when I am with my master. So this is a state that we see in the rubrics, and when you are in the good state of lysinum, you see this rubrics: cheerful evening, comprehension easy, concentration active, energized, excitement from conversation, memory active. So this is where I say the good side, when your vital energy is very healthy, you have this good rubrics. The good side of the whole drug is seen wherein, and the same, these are the symptoms which you see in the patients. If you ask the patients, how was he before? What happened before this episode? What happened before going to the hostel? What happened now in this baby's case? Okay, I don't have the time, but in baby's case, the mother's history was been taken into consideration, where the mother has underwent that deviation of vital force during her pregnancy, which is been carried forward by the child. That is how the child comes into that state of lysinum. But this child was not being given that state wherein he will give out symptoms of lysinum. Okay, so this good side, when this patient, or when this remedies good side is seen, these are the rubrics that we can understand. So what happens with lysinum is, the master with whom you are attached, the master abuses the dog, and it is at that time when the dog becomes mad. Okay, so you will see the dog is always in a good state of mind, always behaving very nicely with everyone around. But the moment you get the dog has been hit or bit or been neglected by the master, the dog goes into this violent state. This is seen in the rubric delusion, walls falling, walls are inward. This is a rubric that we see in the repertory. Now, I don't have enough time to explain all the rubrics. So walls falling inward is, walls gives you a sense of protection. You feel secured and protected because there are walls in your house. So walls falling inward is that sense of security is demolished. The walls are falling on you. The person who is giving you that protection, that particular person is no more giving you the protection. That person is going away from you. So that is walls falling inwards. So these are the ailments from that we see in lysinum. Lysinum gets pathology into the pathological state because of bad news, being abused, physical abuse, mental abuse, from alcoholism, from anger suppressed, from fright. So these are the states wherein, which brings, as said, they have been abused. Abused, that is, that is a phase wherein you just lose that, that sense of security, that sense of attachment with that person. So now abuse, I had to present this in a case in one of the sessions here, wherein all Britain homeopaths from this country were there. Most of them were English homeopaths. So I had to add some extra slides wherein I had to explain in detail, but I'm sure we Indian homeopaths are much more aware of every word used in the repertory. So I don't have to explain too much about this abuse. So abuse can be in any form, as it's clearly visible in this. So abuse does not necessarily mean too much of hitting or beating. It can come even those words, as we see what happens in colleges and schools is, you are fat, you're stupid, you're ugly, so you are of no good use. Even this is been perceived as abuse. This has been used. This has been defined as verbal abuse. So even these things, if it causes a pathology into a patient, we have to consider this as ailments from abuse. This is what happened with the child. He was in a very reputed residential school. The teachers the teachers always said, we don't have any history of bullying. But this child was under the rubric ailments from abuse, because it was nothing great, but it was these small words that have been used. I hate you. I don't like the way you eat. I don't like the way you wear your clothes. So this is verbal abuse. Now, what happens with lysinum is very, very sensitive. It is, as Dr. Pallavi said, very, very sensitive to many things. If you open the rubric section, you have all these rubrics. Much more are there. I have not added to the slide. They're very sensitive to the surroundings, sensitive to external impressions, sensitive to noise, sensitive to odors. It is this sensitivity which brings in the pathology to this patient. Okay, so as I said, I give example. In that case of the prom party, if it was my daughter would have said, to hell with you. If you don't want to come with me, I don't care. Okay, if you don't like. And later on retrospective understood that boyfriend made fun of her clothes. Oh, is this what you're wearing? I'm not going to come with you if you're wearing those clothes for the prom party. That is how the whole episode began with that girl. So that girl was so sensitive to what that boyfriend was saying. So not everybody is sensitive. As I said, my daughter would have said, okay, fine. If you don't want to come, don't come. But this is what I'll be wearing and I'll come like this only. I'll go alone to the party. I don't want you. So this is how everybody's behavior changes. This is how everybody reacts to the situation. Dr. Milindra used to explain us a lot about how environment affects the human being. beings. We all are surrounded by environment. We all get affected by what our parents or siblings or teachers or professional life, anything surrounding us affects us. It is the environment which brings in the pathology, and how the pathology sets inside, how the energy is deviated is understood very nicely if you understand the sensitivity rubrics, of every remedy. You have a set of sensitivity rubrics. So, and of course, and along with that, what comes explains a lot about the remedy. And if you understand every remedy in that particular way, it is very easy for us to see how the patient is behaving, why the patient is behaving. Okay, and because of this sensitivity, anxiety triggers in. As we say, anxiety is the mother of all the rubrics. I mean, mother of all the emotions. We have all this set of rubrics in Lysinum: anxiety pregnancy, anxiety anticipation, anxiety driving out of bed, anxiety with headache. Then comes, the delusions. There is so much of delusions in Lysinum. Delusions being attacked. Now every friend saying, oh, look at your shorts. Why are you wearing such bright color shorts? I mean, and then the father, father in a fit of anger just pushed the sir, I have to reach the airport, just don't come in my way. Stop nagging me. The father might have just pushed the child, but that came, it is a delusion that he's carrying. Delusion attack being. Delusion criticized, for every silly thing you have been criticized. This is a feeling that the mother of the baby had. She used to stay with her mother-in-law, and the mother-in-law used to abuse her, and she used to feel that my mother-in-law is criticizing me all the time. Delusion being injured, delusion being insulted, delusion being laughed at. These are the delusions that you see in Lysinum, and we have almost 54 rubrics. We are not going to talk about the rubrics. As I said, the delusion wall falling is the most important thing that happens in the mind of Lysinum. The moment your security system is gone, you are no more secured by the protective walls. You come up with anxiety followed by lots of delusions, and then lots of fears engulf your mind. So if you look into the fear sections, there is everything literally: fear of being alone, fear of being bitten, fear of dogs, fear of driving. That is the reason this boy in the residential school used to spend the whole time with the teacher. He refused going to his room, he refused going to the library, he refused going to play with his friends. He used to sit. It was that fear that engulfed that mind of the child. Again, the next slide is about rubrics. I'm running through this. Fear of ordeals, fear of being poisoned. Okay, so fear, something is going to happen, something unpleasant is going to happen. So as I said, Lysinum, everything about Lysinum is with this particular person. That person is no more there. So then obviously the mind is loaded with fear. Then the intellectual abilities get affected. That is when the concentration becomes difficult, confusion of mind comes in, the dullness during night comes in. We saw this in the case of residential boy. So as said, it is the emotions first getting affected, and then the intellectual abilities getting affected. Again, I think I have written the same slides about delusions again. Sorry about that. And then comes a state wherein, the delusion swallowed cannot, and wrong suffered. Now the wrong suffered is a very important thing about Lysinum. What happens is, there is no secure system. This father with whom I have everything. If I want to play, I want my father. If I want to eat, I want my father. If I want to go around, watch a movie, I want my father. Father is everything. Now father is gone during the Christmas, and I have to stay with my mother and my sister. Why am I have to undergo this Christmas vacations without my father? Why am I suffering like this? I mean, similarly, I was happy with my family, in my joint family. Why is my father putting me here in the hostel? We're all strange people here. I mean, that's a suffering for him. That's something which has wrongly happened. Why? Wrong is what, that's not right. This is not right. Why am I put in this situation wherein I've been suffering wrongly? I don't deserve this sort of suffering. I've been suffered. The same happened with that mother of the child. She got married into that family, and the same stories, been abused by the husband and the in-laws and all. So I am a good mother. I'm a good wife. I'm a good daughter-in-law, but I am been suffering like this in this house after my marriage. That's a wrong feeling that the Lysinum feels. Did I run through this slide? Just a minute.
Okay.
And then it is the after this state, the Lysinum goes into a state of forsaken feeling of isolation. And finally, they go into a state wherein they feel that they're going to die. Obviously, you don't have any protective system. You're all alone. You're forsaken. So you go into a state wherein you feel you're going to die. And then because of anger, as we saw, this anger, violent anger, trifles, anger from suppression, suppressed emotion, suppressed anger has been suppressed. That is why they fall into ailments from. And the very distinguishing thing about anger here is the anger is always repentant. Followed by quick repentance. This Lysinum always comes up and says, sorry, mom, I should not have done that. And how do they behave in anger? They are very impulsive. They are very reckless. They are ready to stab each other, anybody. And if you read through this rubric, skill, desire to throw child suddenly into fire. This is what happens. There was a case when I used to sit with my father. I don't remember. There was a case in the United States during my young days. This came in the newspaper. I'm sure any senior homeopaths here might have read about this. There was this woman who was being interrogated by the Dallas. The place was in Dallas. Dallas investigative department have reported this, saying that, and she was alcoholic, and she was just asking, please save my child, please save my child. Because what this woman did was, she threw her child into the oven in United States of America. She opened the oven and turned it on, and she put her two-year-old child. This was an actual event happened. So my father used to discuss these live events with me. So my father said this could be a probable case of Lysinum, because what happened, she was alcoholic. Her husband was very abusive. Financial state was very bad. And under the influence of alcoholism, she might have put her own child, the only child, 2-year-old baby, 2-month-old, sorry, into the oven. So this is the impulse morbid, stab his own flesh, or the kill desire to throw the child suddenly into fire. So this is the state, the morbid state seen in Lysinum. Then Lysinum goes into abusive state, barking and cursing. Of course, we have not seen in these cases. So I am going through them. Next one is. Okay, this is one state, restlessness. There's so much of things happening. I think I've missed one slide. What happens is, with so much of suffering, I am suffering, the wrong things are happening with me. So much of things, and there is no security system. They go into a state of torment. I think I missed that slide wherein Lysinum goes. That is the last stage of Lysinum, and we see most of the pathological state, the so-called syphilitic traits, the syphilitic miasm. When you say the syphilitic pathology strikes in when the Lysinum goes into a state of torment. So that is a torment state, and then Lysinum becomes very restless. They just don't understand how to handle themselves, how to handle their emotions, how to handle the anger that they have. There's so much of impulse inside them that they become very restless. So then we have yes, this is the two rubrics that I've just added: traveling desire for wandering, desire to wander. This is again seen in Lysinum. I think I should finish now, because I have finished my allotted time of 1 hour. I think I'll not run through this rubrics. Okay, yes, I've added here. This was this case who was a 2-year-old girl who was been hospitalized in Dallas hospital with a 2-degree, 3-degree burn, and this department interrogates. So just a minute.
The 2nd degree, not 2 degree.
Yeah. I'm under the pressure of finishing on time. I don't want to spoil the reputation of IFPS, so I am just brisking through the slides. Yes, this was the rubrics that we can think about in that case that came up in the news. Hard-hearted, answering, cruelty, praying, lividness. And yes, in the newspaper was written, that woman was inappropriately dressed. So that is lividness that is seen. Remorse, quickly repents. This is what I said. They go into repentance. They become very violent and aggressive, but their anger is followed by repentance, remorse, quick. This was the last stage that we saw in all the cases. After having so much of emotional turmoil, they repent. They show their anger, then they repent, and after repenting, this is what happens. They beg, begging, pray for him too, and not to leave him alone. Praying others, pray for him. He'll ask others, please pray for me. Please pray for my well-being. Please pray for my health, for my security. This is the state which comes when they see that, because they have to survive, isn't isn't it? So they say there is no way for me to survive. They have to behave in that begging attitude. So is the anger, they behave in that violent, aggressive way, but they have to go and ask for forgiveness, because finally at the end of the day, you have to go and stay with that man, that father, that husband. There is no other secure system for them. So they have to ask for repentance so that the future is secured for them. That is why they go into repentance. Oh, I have added this at the end. This is the delusion, fear, as I explained. They go into this delusion, hell, torments of hell without being able to explain the suffering. This was very nicely seen in the baby's mother, wherein the mother explains that she was being tortured in all possible ways in her in-laws' place, and throughout the pregnancy she was been abused in all ways, physically, sexually, mentally, in all ways she was been abused. So after giving lysinum to the child, the mother was also been given lysinum, and further, as I said, on further interrogation, the mother comes up with all the stories wherein she explains that it was very difficult, for me to undergo everything. I felt as if I'm living in hell. That's a phase of tormented state, and that is a state wherein that rubric, I think I mentioned in the previous slide, swallows cannot swallow the things that is there. They cannot understand why these things are happening and how should I assimilate these things happening. So much of torture going around me. So I think that ends lysinum. So what I have tried to explain here is when you study a drug, this is what our master Rao sir has said, when you study a drug, you understand all the rubrics of the drug so that you understand the whole evolution pattern, what happens, how it happens, and what is if the person is in the deviated state, what is the anxiety, what is the fear, what is the anger, and what are the delusions. So when you understand the whole set of rubrics in this pattern, it's very easy to just observe the behavior of the patient who's coming to you, by taking information about the behavioral pattern. When you are in the deviated state, how the patient behaves. That is where the whole system of behavioral homeopathy works, and of course we have our repertory, we have our rubrics. So if you understand what is curative in the medicine, then you have to just match it with what is deviated in the patient and just use that, and that hits the minimum. So I think I have tried to utilize every minute of the 1 hour given to me, and I'm sure I could give something about lysinum to you all here. So I think I will end here again, once again, thanking to all my teachers. This is my father, Dr. Nair, who gave me everything, including the most important homeopathic life. And this is our master, Dr. Milind Rao sir. Without him, I could not have assimilated what my father gave. So I always say my homeopathic father is Dr. Nair, my dad, and Dr. Milind Rao is my homeopathic mother. If the mother would not have cooked dishes and served the child never grows, even if the father is rich and bringing home expensive vegetables. So similarly, Rao sir used to work too much with all his students for that matter, and he used to make us understand how rubrics should be understood, how every word of the rubric should be understood, what the patients say has to be interpreted. Everything was being taught by him. So thanks a lot to IFPH for giving me this opportunity, and I end my session here. Thank you very much.